This is the Provoked Prawn, and in this video I'm perhaps illogically comparing the Corsair AF120 Elites with the Corsair QL120s. Now these are two drastically different fans. One is designed specifically for the best possible airflow, and the other more for aesthetics. They're also slightly different in terms of the setup, but I thought it might be interesting to compare them and show later on a temperature and noise comparison to talk about the differences between them. Obviously these are vastly different. One fan has no RGB lighting, but it's designed with air vortex air guide technology to deliver a really good cooling performance. And you'll see the specs listed here, and you'll notice that it has a 10 to 59 CFM as well as a max 1850 RPM versus the 1500 RPM on the QL120s and a max airflow of 41 CFM. So the AF120 Elites are obviously designed to deliver better airflow, and I'll leave all the specs for comparison's sake in the description. Now this might seem like a bit of a crazy comparison. Obviously the QL120s have more of a focus on RGB lighting, but the question is, what do you want out of your case? Do you want a case that looks fantastic or a machine that runs well? Now in my mind the QL120s and the LL120s from Corsair do a fairly good job of balancing both looking really nice and still delivering good airflow, and I've found them to be pretty decent on the various cases that I've set them up with. But now Corsair have the AF120 Elites, which are essentially an alternative. So if you're not a fan of RGB lighting or aren't really fussed about it, but instead want something that delivers good cooling performance, but more importantly also runs quieter under smaller loads, then this is it. It's also a nice looking fan, as you'll see it compared up with the QL120s. It's not bad aesthetically. You'll notice a slight difference in the fins. Obviously there's no RGB lighting, but they are slightly more angled, and at the rear they're perhaps not as nice looking either. You do have these various different vanes that are designed to help with the airflow being pushed through. So these are high static pressure fans, but also designed to deliver really good cooling performance. The other thing of interest about them is that they also will work with 0 RPM mode. So if you have them hooked up to a Commander Pro or a Commander Core, you can run them so they don't actually spin when not necessary. The other obvious highlight is they're much easier to set up than the RGB fans because there's only one cable. I've done a video recently on how to install Corsair fans and connect up the cables, so I'll link to that video in the description so you can find out more about the complexities of that and what to do. But in this video I'm going to be showing you how I installed them in the Corsair 4000D, and I also have done a video recently on the 4000D QL edition. So in this video I'm going to be comparing those two builds, talking about the differences in terms of aesthetics, but more importantly cooling performance and also noise levels. One thing of note is you'll see the QL spinning up here with the RGB lighting isn't properly working. That's because I needed to update the Commander Core, so don't worry, it's not a defective fan, as you'll see in a second. This is the original 4000D airflow, and I swapped out all the fans that I had in there originally for the Corsair AF120 Elites, and one of the things that you'll see immediately is those top fans aren't spinning, and that's because they're in the 0 RPM mode. So if the CPU cooler recognizes that the coolant inside is cool enough, then it won't run the fans until it heats up to the point where it needs to. Also with the door off, you'll see we're just getting below 50 decibels, somewhere in the mid 40s. Obviously you're not going to be running your case with the door off, so this isn't a fair test, but it does demonstrate that the levels are quite quiet. Now Corsair claims that you can get around 31 decibels out of these fans, but obviously that's going to vary depending on your room, your environment and your system, so it's worth bearing in mind. Now at the other end of the spectrum is the Corsair 4000D QL edition. This is the other build that I did, slightly different. You'll notice it has a different cooler on it, for example, but it has the same motherboard, same CPU, and obviously the same setup logic in terms of the fans. It's got 3 fans on the front intaking and 2 on the radiator exhausting and 1 at the rear. So the same setup and the same logic in terms of what's happening there, but obviously vastly different in terms of the overall aesthetic. You can see that the AF120 Elites, for example, look very stealthy by comparison. I think they're a nice finish actually with the white look and feel to them, and they add a nice bit of non-RGB cooling to the case. Now the first step of the process, the one that I wanted to test first, was to see how quiet these fans ran. So I'm going to go with the AF120s now and then move into the QLs in a minute. I set everything, the fans and the pump, all to quiet to test what the levels were like. And then I ran some benchmarks. So to put the system under pressure, I ran a number of different benchmarks with several passes. So I had to test it and try out various different things. So I'm recording footage using OBS Studio. I am also running Cinebench R23 and Heaven Benchmark all at the same time. I have Corsair's iCUE software running so that you can see the temperature and fan speeds, and also hardware monitor to give separate data on that because I just wanted to test it out. I actually found that the performance was satisfactory at this level. Now don't forget, this is with everything set to quiet, so it's not going to be as cool as it could be, but it was maxing out at around 86 degrees on some of the cores. The overall package was 86 degrees centigrade, but some of the cores, as you can see, varied in temperature. Now it's worth taking this with a pinch of salt because every benchmark will be different and every test will be different. You're unlikely to put your system under this sort of load, and also your system will probably be different. This is an Extreme Edition CPU, for example, and an RTX 3060 Ti, which you can see the GPU is running at a max temp of around 83 degrees, so quite warm but not super overly hot. Now obviously, if you want to improve the cooling performance, you could just simply crank the fan speed up. But the nice thing about this is the benefit of running it like this is obviously the fans are quite quiet. So with the door on and the fans set to their quiet mode, but these tests still happening, you can see I'm getting somewhere in the low 40s in terms of the decibel reading. So a very pleasant sound, not too obnoxious, not super loud, just about good enough. Now obviously, if you weren't running anything quite as crazy as this, if you're just doing some mild gaming, you probably find you could get a little bit lower than that and a lot more bearable. It's going to depend on the case that you're running it in. Now to see if we can improve performance, I went in and I cranked the fans all the way up to the extreme mode and then carried on running the same test. So this is several passes with Cinebench and with Heaven Benchmark, and also don't forget I'm also recording the footage as well at the same time, so there's a lot of different things going on here. Now you can see we're topping out about 79 degrees C, so a few degrees cooler on the package overall, and also just in each of the different cores. So obviously cranking the fan speed up has made a difference to the CPU, if nothing else, and the overall system performance will obviously benefit. You can also see the max temp on the GPU is now 89 degrees, but it's about 69 as well, and you can see the sort of fan speeds and overall temperatures from iCUE software here. So raising the fan speed has obviously reduced the temperatures, which is obviously beneficial and what you want, but you can see more importantly that it hasn't actually made that massive an impact to the noise. So now getting around 46 decibels out of the case, and obviously once again this is going to vary depending on the case you're using and your environment, but this is a quiet room with very little noise otherwise, and you can see 45 decibels, manageable, not too obnoxious. In real world terms, it certainly doesn't sound very loud, and not the loudest I've heard by any means. So now we're going to get into testing out the QL fans. Now, as I said earlier, slightly different cooler, but otherwise the same logic. And straight out of the box, just running on the default settings, I found I was getting in the low 40s in terms of the decibel. Again, that's with the door off though. So we ran the tests once again with the fans set to quiet, and this is the QL120s now. The same sort of logic. I applied the same logic to both tests. So once again, running Cinebench, Heaven, recording the stuff that was happening, and also hardware monitor and iCUE running at the same time, so you can see what's going on there. So you'll see the max temperatures on the GPU is about 81 degrees, 69 as well, and then you can also get a view of the system temps and a glance at what's going on there. So now the CPU core temperatures are somewhere around 83 degrees at the maximum level, and that's actually comparable with the AF120 Elites when they were running on their quiet mode, which is interesting. However, what is worth noting is the difference in the audible levels. So you can see that the fans are now kicking out around 50 decibels, and upwards, so actually noisier as standard on the quietest setting when running the same tests. So there's a substantial difference in the noise and a very slight fluctuation in the temperatures. Just keep in mind the cooler's different cooler, so it might have better cooling performance, and that could have an impact on these tests. But now we're going to ramp things up to the extreme levels. So now I've turned all the fans and the pump up to extreme and run through the same process once again. You can see the coolant temperature is 47 degrees here. The interesting point of note here is there hasn't really been a significant change in the overall package and core temperatures. It's still 83 degrees C, so even on extreme, the QL120s don't make that much of a difference, where there was a difference with the AF120 Elites. But it does make a significant difference to the noise levels. So now I'm getting over 60 decibels when turned onto extreme, so significantly louder both than the quiet mode and than the AF120 Elites as well. Now, is that trade-off worth it for the wonderful RGB lighting? I think so. I don't think the fans make so much of a difference that you'd trade off the awesome lighting, but this is obviously a personal preference. If you want quieter fans without RGB, then the AF120s are the way to go. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Thanks for watching. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Hope you found this video useful, interesting, hilarious, or otherwise. Take a look at these other videos that I think you might find interesting as well. And have a look at the description for links and other information you might find useful. Click that join button to see the benefits of being a member of my YouTube channel. And most importantly, have a great life.